3 years. 3 years of sleeping in the same bed with a man who never once reached for me in the darkness. 3 years of goodnight kisses on the forehead that felt more like duty than desire. 3 years of wondering if I had made the biggest mistake of my life when I said yes to Marcus Chen. But tonight, I was going to change everything. If this story of forbidden desire and a love that refused to die speaks to your heart, subscribe now and leave a like if you believe that true passion can survive even the cruelest circumstances. Tell me in the comments, have you ever fought for love when everyone told you to give up? Your presence here means everything. The accident happened on a Tuesday. Isn't it strange how life can shatter on such an ordinary day? Marcus was driving home from a business meeting, his mind probably running through quarterly reports and investment strategies the way it always did. He was brilliant, my husband. At 35, he'd built a tech empire that had his name whispered in the same breath as the greatest innovators of our generation. Everyone wanted a piece of Marcus Chen. Everyone except the drunk driver who ran the red light at the intersection of 5th and Main. The doctors said he was lucky to be alive. Lucky. That word tasted like ash in my mouth as I sat beside his hospital bed, watching machines breathe for him, watching his chest rise and fall with mechanical precision. When he finally opened his eyes 2 weeks later, the first thing he said was my name. Elena. It came out as barely a whisper, but I heard it. I heard it, and I broke down sobbing because I thought we'd made it through the worst. I was wrong. The worst came 3 months later when the rehabilitation specialist sat us down in that sterile office with its motivational posters and fake plants and told us that Marcus would never walk again. Complete paralysis from the waist down. Permanent. That word hung in the air between us like a death sentence. I watched something die in Marcus's eyes that day. Not his body. His body was already broken. Something deeper. Something that had nothing to do with his legs and everything to do with his soul. We'd been married for 6 months when the accident happened. 6 perfect months of stolen kisses in his corner office, of him carrying me over the threshold of our penthouse apartment, of lazy Sunday mornings where we'd make love until the afternoon sun painted golden stripes across our tangled sheets. 6 months of feeling like the luckiest woman alive because Marcus Chen, the man every woman in Seattle wanted, had chosen me. Elena Rodriguez, the girl from the Bronx who'd worked 3 jobs to put herself through nursing school. The girl who'd shown up at his company's health fair and somehow caught the eye of a man who could have had anyone. He used to look at me like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. After the accident, he stopped looking at me altogether. The first year was survival, learning how to navigate our new reality. The wheelchair, the accessible bathroom, the physical therapy sessions that left him exhausted and silent. I quit my job at the hospital to take care of him full-time, even though he protested, even though he said he could hire nurses, that I didn't need to sacrifice my career. But he was my husband. In sickness and in health, remember, I meant those vows. He moved into the guest bedroom after the first month home, said it was easier, that he didn't want to disturb my sleep when he had to get up in the night. I didn't fight him. I should have, but I didn't. I told myself it was temporary, that he needed space to adjust, that eventually we'd find our way back to each other. By the 2nd year, we'd fallen into a routine. I'd wake up, make breakfast, help him with his morning routine, though he insisted on doing most things himself. His upper body had become incredibly strong from the endless hours in physical therapy, from pushing himself harder than any of his doctors recommended. He'd work from home in his office, taking video calls and running his company with the same ruthless efficiency he always had. We'd have dinner together, usually in silence. He'd thank me politely like I was a caretaker, not his wife. Then he'd retreat to his room and I'd retreat to mine, and the space between us grew wider with every passing day. I tried everything. I'd dress up for dinner in the dresses he used to love, the ones that showed just enough skin to make his eyes darken with want. He'd compliment me absently and return to his food. I'd suggest we watch movies together, cuddle on the couch like we used to. He'd agree, but sit stiffly beside me, never touching, never relaxing. I'd reach for his hand, and he'd let me hold it, but it felt lifeless, like holding the hand of a statue. The worst part wasn't the lack of physical intimacy. It was the way he'd shut me out emotionally. The man who used to tell me everything, who'd wake me up at 2 a.m. just to share some idea that had struck him, who'd spend hours asking about my day, my dreams, my fears, that man had disappeared. In his place was this polite stranger who shared my home, but not my life. Our friends stopped inviting us places after a while. Marcus would always decline, and going alone felt like admitting defeat. My mother called every week, her voice heavy with concern that she tried to hide. "You can come home, Mika," she'd say. "No one would blame you." But I couldn't. I couldn't, because somewhere under all that pain and anger and self-hatred, Marcus was still in there. I'd see glimpses of him sometimes, the way his jaw would tighten when I laughed at something on TV, like he was fighting not to smile. The way his eyes would follow me when he thought I wasn't looking, hunger and longing warring with something darker in their depths. The way his hands would clench on the armrests of his wheelchair when another man spoke to me, even something as innocent as the delivery guy making small talk. It was our 3rd anniversary when I finally admitted to myself that I was losing him. Not to death, but to something worse. To the prison of his own mind. To the belief that he was no longer a man. That he had nothing to offer me. That I deserved better. I could see it in his eyes every time he looked at me. Guilt. Shame. A desperate kind of love that was eating him alive because he thought he was destroying my life by staying in it. That night, I lay in my empty bed, staring at the ceiling, and made a decision. I was done being patient. I was done giving him space. I was done pretending that this half-life we were living was acceptable. Marcus Chen was my husband, and I was going to fight for him, whether he wanted me to or not. The idea came to me 3 weeks later while I was sorting through boxes in our storage unit. We were looking for some old business documents Marcus needed, and I stumbled across a box labeled simply E. My heart had stuttered when I saw it because I recognized Marcus's handwriting. Inside were things from our early relationship, movie ticket stubs from our first date, the program from the charity gala where we danced until 3 a.m, photos of us laughing, touching, looking at each other like nothing else in the world existed. And at the bottom, wrapped carefully in tissue paper, was the nightgown. I'd worn it on our wedding night. Cream-colored silk that fell to mid-thigh, with delicate lace at the neckline that left very little to the imagination. Marcus had taken one look at me in it, and his control had shattered. He'd crossed the hotel room in 3 strides, pulled me into his arms, and made love to me with a desperation that had left us both shaking. I remember everything about that night. The way his hands trembled as he slid the straps off my shoulders. The way he'd whispered my name like a prayer. The way he'd looked at me afterward, his fingers tracing patterns on my bare skin, and told me he'd never believed in soulmates until he met me. I took the nightgown home. I washed it carefully by hand, letting it dry on a hanger in my bathroom where Marcus wouldn't see it. And then, I waited for the right moment. It came on a Friday night. Marcus had been in a video conference that had gone poorly. I could hear the tension in his voice through his office door, could hear him snapping at whoever was on the other end of the call in a way that was completely unlike him. When he finally emerged 2 hours later, his jaw was clenched, and his eyes were stormy. Dinner was quiet. I'd made his favorite, chicken piccata with roasted asparagus, but he barely touched it. "Are you okay?" I asked softly. He looked up at me, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw past his walls. I saw exhaustion. I saw pain. I saw a man who was drowning and didn't know how to ask for help. "I'm fine," he said, which we both knew was a lie. "Marcus." "Don't, Elena." His voice came out sharper than he'd probably intended. "Just don't." I should have backed off. The old Elena would have, but I'd made a decision, and I was sticking to it. "Talk to me," I pressed. "Please. We never talk anymore. We never do anything anymore. We're married, but we're living like strangers." "There's nothing to talk about," he said flatly, pushing his plate away. "This is our life now. Get used to it." The words hit me like a slap, but I refused to flinch. "No," I said quietly. "This is what you've decided our life should be. You've given up. On yourself, on us, on everything we had." His head snapped up, and the look in his eyes was dangerous. "Given up? I'm paralyzed, Elena. I can't walk. I can't." He stopped abruptly, his hands gripping the table so hard his knuckles turned white. "I can't give you what you need, what I need." I stood up, my own anger finally breaking through. "You think you know what I need? I need my husband back. I need the man who used to hold me, who used to talk to me, who used to look at me like I was his entire world. That man didn't die in that accident, but you're killing him anyway. You don't understand. Then, make me understand." I was shouting now, all the frustration and loneliness and desperate love of the past 3 years pouring out. "Make me understand why you've decided we can't have a marriage anymore. Make me understand why you sleep in a different room. Make me understand why you look at me like you're dying inside, but you won't let me touch you, won't let me love you. Because I can't be what you deserve." His voice cracked on the last word, and suddenly he wasn't angry anymore. He was broken. "You deserve a man who can dance with you, who can carry you to bed, who can make love to you properly. You deserve someone whole, not this broken shell." Tears were streaming down my face, but I didn't care. I walked around the table until I was standing right in front of him. "You think I stayed because I felt sorry for you? You think I'm here out of some misguided sense of duty? I'm here because I love you, you idiot. I love you. Not the version of you that could walk, not some fantasy of what you used to be. I love you, Marcus. This, you, right now, exactly as you are." He was crying too now, silent tears tracking down his face. "You can't," he whispered. "I can't give you. You don't know what I need," I interrupted. "You've decided what I need without asking me. You've decided our marriage is over without consulting me. You've made every decision about our life together completely on your own, and I'm done letting you." I went to bed that night with my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Our conversation had ended with Marcus retreating to his room, but something had shifted. I'd seen it in his eyes. Fear, yes, but also something else. Hope. Maybe, or at least the possibility of hope. I showered slowly, letting the hot water unknot some of the tension in my shoulders. Then I opened the drawer where I'd hidden the nightgown and pulled it out. The silk was cool against my skin as I slipped it on. It still fit perfectly, hugging my curves in all the right places. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. 3 years of careful control had made me forget what it felt like to be seen as desirable, to be seen as a woman and not just a caregiver. My dark hair fell in waves past my shoulders. My brown eyes, usually so careful and measured, looked different tonight. Determined, almost defiant. The nightgown left very little to the imagination. The lace barely concealed my breasts, and the hem stopped high enough on my thighs that any movement would reveal everything. I looked like I was planning a seduction, which, I supposed, I was. My husband might have forgotten that I was a woman with needs and desires, but I hadn't. I stood outside his door for a full minute, my hand hovering over the doorknob. My heart was racing. My palms were sweating. A voice in my head that sounded suspiciously like my mother was asking me what I thought I was doing, if I'd lost my mind, if I was really about to force myself on my disabled husband. But that voice was wrong. I wasn't forcing anything. I was reminding him, reminding us both of what we'd lost, and showing him that it wasn't gone forever, unless we let it be. I knocked softly. "Come in," his voice called, probably expecting the same goodnight routine we'd maintained for 3 years. A chaste kiss on the forehead, a whispered goodnight, a retreat to separate rooms and separate lives. I opened the door. Marcus was sitting up in bed, his laptop open on his legs, probably working even at this hour like he always did. He glanced up absently, probably ready to tell me goodnight, and then he froze. His laptop slid sideways, forgotten. His eyes widened, pupils dilating as they traveled slowly from my face down my body and back up again. The look in his eyes. God, that look. It was like watching a dam break. 3 years of careful control, 3 years of keeping me at arm's length, 3 years of pretending he didn't want me. All of it shattered in an instant. "Elena," he breathed, and my name on his lips sounded like a prayer and a curse and a plea all at once. His hands were gripping the sheets so tightly I could see every tendon standing out in his forearms. "What are you doing?" I closed the door behind me and leaned against it. "I'm coming to bed," I said simply. "With my husband. Where I belong." "You can't." But his voice lacked conviction. His eyes were still roving over me, hungry and desperate, and full of a need he couldn't quite hide anymore. "Can't I?" I pushed off from the door and walked toward him slowly, deliberately. Every step made the nightgown shift against my skin, made the hem ride up, just a little higher. Marcus watched me approach like a man watching salvation and damnation walking toward him, and unable to decide which one he wanted more. "Stop," he said, but it came out as a whisper. "I need you to stop, Elena. Please. Why?" I reached the edge of the bed, standing close enough that he could reach out and touch me if he wanted. Close enough that he could smell the lavender lotion I'd smoothed over my skin. Close enough that there was no hiding the effect I was having on him. "Because I can't." He closed his eyes, his jaw clenching. "Because I can't give you what you need." "Open your eyes," I commanded softly. He did, reluctantly, and the raw desire there made my breath catch. "Look at me, Marcus. Really look at me. Do I look unsatisfied? Do I look like I need something you can't give me? I'm right here, standing in front of you in the nightgown I wore on our wedding night, and I'm choosing to be here. I'm choosing you." His hands were shaking now. "Elena, you don't understand." "Then help me understand," I said, echoing my words from earlier. "Tell me what you're so afraid of. That you'll disappoint me? That you're not man enough for me anymore? That I'll realize I made a mistake?" His eyes squeezed shut again, and a single tear tracked down his cheek. "Yes," he whispered. "All of it. I'm terrified that if I let you in, if I let myself want you again, you'll realize that I'm broken, that I can't be the husband you deserve, that you stayed out of pity, not love." I reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away if he wanted, and cupped his face in my hands. He stiffened at the contact, but didn't retreat. "Listen to me very carefully," I said, forcing him to meet my eyes. "I did not spend 3 years of my life caring for you, fighting for you, loving you, out of pity. I stayed because you're my husband, because I love you, because the accident changed your body but it didn't change who you are. You're still the brilliant, stubborn, infuriating man I fell in love with. You're still Marcus Chen, and I still choose you." His composure was cracking. I could see it in the way his breathing had become shallow and fast, in the way his eyes kept dropping to my body and jerking away like he was fighting with himself, in the way his hands trembled where they gripped the sheets. "Marcus," I said softly, letting my thumbs stroke along his cheekbones. "I miss you. I miss the way you used to hold me. I miss falling asleep in your arms. I miss waking up next to you. I miss feeling like your wife instead of your nurse. I miss being touched by you. Please," he breathed, and I wasn't sure if he was begging me to stop or to continue. "Please what?" I moved closer, until my legs were pressed against the edge of his bed, until there was barely any space between us. "Tell me what you want." "I can't," he said, but his eyes betrayed him. They were dark with desire now, all pretense of indifference gone. "I can't want you like this. I can't be the husband you need." "You keep saying that," I murmured, and then I did something I'd been dreaming about for 3 years. I climbed onto the bed beside him. He inhaled sharply, his whole body going rigid. "Elena, what are you?" "I'm showing you," I interrupted, settling against the pillows next to him, close enough that our shoulders touched. "That I'm not afraid. That I still want you. That nothing about your body changes how I feel about you." His jaw was clenched so tight I thought he might crack a tooth. "You don't know what you're asking for." "Then show me," I challenged, turning to face him fully. The nightgown shifted with the movement, riding higher on my thighs, and his eyes followed the motion helplessly. "Show me what you think I can't handle. Prove to me that we can't still have this." "Have what?" he asked roughly, his eyes finally meeting mine again. "This connection. This need. This love." I reached for his hand, the one that was gripping the sheet like a lifeline, and slowly pried his fingers loose. He watched, transfixed, as I brought his hand to my face, then pressed a kiss to his palm. His breath caught. That simple touch, the first intimate contact we'd had in 3 years, sent electricity through both of us. I could see it in his eyes, feel it in the way his fingers curled slightly against my skin. "Elena," my name came out as a groan. "You're killing me." "Good," I whispered, and then I guided his hand down past my neck, down to where the lace of the nightgown barely covered my racing heart. "Feel that? That's what you do to me. That's what you've always done to me." His hand was trembling against my skin, and I could feel his resistance warring with his desire. 3 years, Marcus. 3 years of sleeping alone, of missing you, of wanting you. 3 years of you treating me like I'm made of glass, like touching me would break me. But I'm not fragile. I'm not going to shatter. The only thing breaking is my heart. Every single night that I sleep in a bed without you. His control snapped. I saw the exact moment it happened. His eyes went from conflicted to determined, from scared to hungry. His hand, which had been hovering uncertainly against my chest, suddenly splayed wide, feeling my heartbeat, feeling the way my breath hitched at his touch. "You have no idea," he said, his voice dropping to a register I hadn't heard in years, rough and dark and full of barely restrained need. "You have no idea how many nights I've lain here thinking about you, wanting you. Hating myself for wanting you when I can't give you everything." "Can't?" I challenged, emboldened by the fire I could see building in his eyes. "Or won't? There's a difference, Marcus. One is about ability. The other is about choice." He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the war happening behind his eyes. Then, slowly, deliberately, he moved his hand, slid it from my chest down my ribcage, over the silk of the nightgown, learning the shape of me again like he was memorizing something precious he'd thought was lost forever. I couldn't stop the small sound that escaped my throat at his touch. couldn't stop the way my body arched toward him instinctively, seeking more contact, more connection, more of everything I'd been denied for so long. His eyes darkened further at my reaction. "This is dangerous," he warned. But he didn't stop touching me. His hand found my hip, gripping firmly, possessively, in a way that made heat pool low in my stomach. "Why?" I breathed. "Because once I start," his voice was strained, "I don't know if I can stop." "Then don't," I said simply, and kissed him. For a heartbeat, he was frozen in shock. Then he groaned against my mouth and kissed me back with 3 years of pent-up hunger and love and desperate need. His hand tightened on my hip, pulling me closer. His other hand came up to tangle in my hair, holding me to him, like he was afraid I might disappear. The kiss was nothing like the chaste pecs we'd maintained over the past 3 years. This was claiming possession. A man remembering what it felt like to want and be wanted. His tongue traced the seam of my lips, and I opened for him eagerly, meeting him with equal hunger. 3 years of loneliness and longing and love unexpressed all came pouring out in that kiss. When we finally broke apart, both of us breathing hard, Marcus pressed his forehead to mine. His eyes were closed, and I could see the war still happening in his expression. "Alana," he whispered. "We can't." "Yes, we can," I insisted, my hands coming up to frame his face. "Marcus, look at me." He did, reluctantly. "I want you," I said clearly. "I want you exactly as you are. I want my husband back. I want to feel close to you again. And I need you to stop deciding what I can and can't handle, what I do and don't want. I'm a grown woman. Let me make my own choices." "What if I can't?" he swallowed hard. "What if I disappoint you?" "Then we figure it out together," I said simply. "Like married people do. But Marcus, I need you to understand something. These past 3 years, sleeping alone, being held at arm's length, watching you shut me out, that has been the worst disappointment of my life. Worse than anything that could happen in this bed." He closed his eyes, pain flashing across his face. "I didn't want to hurt you. I know," I said softly. "But you did. You hurt me by pushing me away. You hurt me by deciding that your disability meant we couldn't have intimacy anymore. You hurt me by choosing to suffer alone instead of letting me in. And I hurt you." He opened his eyes again, and they were glistening with unshed tears. "By shutting you out. By being so focused on what I couldn't give you that I never asked what you actually needed." "Yes," I agreed. "But we can fix this. If you're willing to try, if you're willing to let me love you the way I've always wanted to." He stared at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached up and wiped away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen down my cheek. "I don't deserve you," he said quietly. "Probably not," I agreed with a watery smile. "But you're stuck with me anyway." A sound escaped him, half laugh, half sob. Then his hand slid behind my neck, and he pulled me in for another kiss. This one was slower, deeper, full of apology and promise, and a tenderness that made my heart ache. I shifted closer on the bed, needing to feel more of him, needing to close the distance that had existed between us for too long. My hand found his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heartbeat, the warmth of his skin through the thin t-shirt he wore. He was solid, real, mine. His hand traced down my spine, making me shiver. When he reached the small of my back, he paused. "Tell me if I do something you don't like," he murmured against my lips. "Tell me if I hurt you." "The same goes for you," I whispered back, and felt him tense slightly. "Marcus, I'm serious. If something doesn't feel right, if you need to stop, you tell me. This is about both of us, not just me." He nodded slowly, and I could see some of the tension leave his shoulders. The fear that he'd hurt me, disappoint me, fail me, it was still there. But beneath it now was something else. Determination and desire. His hands began to move with more confidence now, exploring the body he'd denied himself for so long. Every touch was reverent, almost worshipful, as if he was memorizing me all over again. And I let him. God, I let him. I'd missed this so much, missed being touched, not as a nurse touching a patient, but as a wife being touched by her husband. Missed the feeling of being desired, wanted, needed. His fingers traced the lace edge of the nightgown, and I felt him hesitate. "Can I?" he asked quietly. "Please," I breathed. The silk whispered against my skin as he slowly, carefully, began to remove it. His eyes never left mine, watching my reactions, making sure this was still okay, still what I wanted. When the nightgown finally pooled on the bed beside us, leaving me bare before him for the first time in 3 years, I saw his breath catch. "You're so beautiful," he whispered, and there was such raw honesty in his voice that it brought tears to my eyes. "You always have been. Even after everything, even with time, you take my breath away." I reached for the hem of his shirt. "Your turn," I said softly. He let me pull it over his head, and I took a moment to just look at him. His body had changed since the accident. His upper body was more muscular from the constant work of getting around, his arms and shoulders corded with strength. His chest was broader, more defined. But there were also new scars, marks from the surgeries and procedures he'd endured. I traced one of them gently, a long line across his abdomen. "Does it hurt?" I asked. "Not anymore," he said quietly. "Not physically, anyway." I leaned down and pressed a kiss to the scar. "Every mark on your body is proof that you survived," I murmured against his skin. "Proof that you fought. Proof that you're still here with me. That's beautiful to me, Marcus. All of you is beautiful to me." He made a sound low in his throat, something between a groan and a sob, and pulled me to him. Kissed me with an intensity that stole my breath. His hands were everywhere now, relearning the map of my body, rediscovering what made me gasp and what made me moan. I touched him with equal hunger, equal need, my fingers tracing the new landscape of his body with reverence and desire. When my hand moved lower, sliding down his abdomen, he caught my wrist. "Elena, wait." His voice was strained. I need to explain." "You don't have to explain anything," I said gently. "I know things are different now, I don't care." "But I do," he insisted. His eyes met mine, vulnerable and scared. "I can still feel desire. I still want you desperately. But I don't have full sensation, and I can't. The mechanics are different. I might not be able to," he trailed off, frustration and shame warring in his expression. "Marcus," I said firmly, "I don't care about mechanics. I don't care about what you think you can't do. I care about being close to you, about feeling connected to you, about expressing this love between us in whatever way we can. There's no script we have to follow, no checklist of things that have to happen for this to matter, for this to be real. But what matters to me," I continued, my hand moving to cup his face, "is that you touch me. That you let me touch you. That we figure this out together. That we remember what it feels like to be intimate, to be vulnerable with each other. Everything else, we'll work out as we go." He stared at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, the fear in his eyes began to give way to something else. Something that looked like relief, and wonder, and a desperate kind of hope. "You really mean that?" "I really mean that," I confirmed. "Now stop overthinking and kiss me." He did. And this time, there was less hesitation, less fear. His hands moved over my skin with growing confidence, and I encouraged him with soft sounds and movements, showing him without words what I liked, what I wanted, what I needed. We explored each other slowly, learning this new version of intimacy together. It was different from before the accident, yes, but it wasn't less. If anything, it was more, because we had to be more present, more creative, more communicative. We had to talk about what felt good, what didn't, what we wanted to try. And in that vulnerability, in that openness, we found something we'd lost. Not just physical connection, but emotional intimacy on a level we'd never achieved before. Marcus was tender, but also passionate, gentle, but also intense. His hands and mouth were everywhere. Learning what made me gasp his name, what made my back arch, what made me clutch at his shoulders and beg for more. And I learned him too. Learned that he could still feel pleasure, just differently than before. Learned what touches made his breath catch, what words made his eyes darken with desire, what made him groan my name like a prayer. At some point I ended up in his lap, straddling him, our bodies pressed together as close as we could get. His arms were around me, holding me tight, and my hands were in his hair, and we were kissing like we were drowning and the other person was air. "I love you," he murmured against my lips between kisses. "I love you so much, Elena. I'm sorry I made you feel unwanted. I'm sorry I pushed you away. I'm sorry for wasting 3 years when we could have had this. We have it now," I breathed. "That's what matters. We have it now and every day going forward. Promise me," he said, his hands tightening on my waist. "Promise me you'll tell me if this isn't enough, if you need more than I can give. Promise me you won't stay out of guilt or pity." "I promise," I said, meeting his eyes. "If you promise me the same thing. Promise me you'll stop deciding what I need without asking me. Promise me you'll talk to me when you're struggling instead of shutting me out. Promise me you'll let me love you." "I promise," he said, and sealed it with a kiss. We made love slowly, carefully, learning this new language of intimacy together. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of awkwardness as we figured out what worked and what didn't. There were moments when Marcus tensed up, old fears and insecurities rising, but I stayed with him through all of it, touching him, kissing him, whispering words of love and encouragement until he relaxed again. And when we finally reached a peak together, when pleasure crashed over us in waves and left us clinging to each other, breathless and trembling, it felt like coming home, like finding something precious that we'd thought was lost forever. After, we lay tangled together, my head on his chest, his arms around me, our breathing slowly returning to normal. The silence between us now felt different, not empty and lonely, but full and content. "I can't believe we waited 3 years for this," I murmured against his skin. "I can't believe I was stupid enough to push you away for 3 years," he replied, his hand stroking through my hair. "Elena, I'm sorry. For all of it. For shutting you out. For making you sleep alone. For forgetting that our marriage was supposed to be a partnership, not me making all the decisions." "I know," I said softly. "And I forgive you. But Marcus, we can't go back to how things were. We can't go back to separate rooms and careful distance." "I don't want to," he said firmly. His arms tightened around me. "I want you here, with me, every night. I want to fall asleep holding you and wake up beside you. I want to remember what it's like to have a real marriage, not just 2 people coexisting in the same space." "That's all I've wanted," I admitted, pressing a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. "That's all I've ever wanted." We stayed like that for a long time, just holding each other, reconnecting in the aftermath of what had felt like both a homecoming and a new beginning. Eventually, Marcus shifted slightly, adjusting his position. "You okay?" I asked immediately. Yeah, he said, but I could hear the hesitation in his voice. Just my legs. Sometimes they ache. Can I do anything? I started to sit up, slipping automatically into caregiver mode, but his hand on my shoulder stopped me. No, he said gently. I'm okay. I need you to understand that there are going to be times like this. Times when my body reminds us both that things are different now. Times when I need help with things that are humiliating to need help with. I need to know that's okay. Of course it's okay, I said immediately. Marcus, I was a nurse, remember? Nothing about the human body embarrasses me, and nothing about taking care of you diminishes what we just shared. You're my husband. Of course I'm going to help you when you need it. But, and he met my eyes, there was a vulnerability there that broke my heart. What if it's not sexy? What if sometimes I need you to be my nurse and not my wife, and it ruins moments like this? Then we deal with it, I said simply. Marcus, life isn't always sexy. Marriage isn't always sexy. Sometimes it's helping each other when we're sick, or dealing with hard days or navigating challenges. But that doesn't make the sexy moments any less meaningful. If anything, it makes them more so. Because we choose to be here, we choose to navigate all of it together. He studied my face for a long moment. How did I get so lucky? He asked quietly. How did I end up married to someone who sees me like this? Like what? Like he gestured vaguely. Like I'm still whole. Like the accident didn't break something fundamental. You are still whole, I insisted. Marcus, you have to stop equating your worth as a person, as a man, as a husband, with your ability to walk. That's one thing your body can't do anymore. One thing out of thousands. Your mind is still brilliant. Your heart is still capable of love. Your hands can still touch me. Your mouth can still kiss me. Your arms are strong enough to hold me. You're still you, just adapted. Different doesn't mean broken. I wish I could see myself the way you see me, he said softly. Then, I'll keep reminding you, I replied. Every single day if I have to. Until you believe it. We should probably talk, he said after another comfortable silence. About expectations going forward. About what this means for us. What do you want it to mean? I asked. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I want to move back into our bedroom. I want to fall asleep with you every night. I want to wake up beside you every morning. I want us to have a real marriage again, in every sense of the word. Yes to all of that, I said immediately. What else? I want to go to physical therapy more seriously, he continued. Not because I think I'll walk again, but because I want to be as independent as possible. I don't want you to have to do everything for me. I want to pull my weight. I want to start going out again, he continued. I've been hiding for 3 years, and that's not fair to you. You shouldn't have to be isolated just because I was too much of a coward to face the world. I want to take you on dates. I want to show you off. I want everyone to know that I'm the luckiest man alive, because Elena Rodriguez chose me. Marcus, I said softly, touching his face. I love all of that, but I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that we'll talk, I said. When things get hard, when you're struggling, when the old fears and insecurities come back, because they will, promise me you'll tell me instead of shutting me out. Promise me that we'll face whatever comes together. I promise, he said, and I could hear the sincerity in his voice. No more shutting you out. No more making decisions about our relationship unilaterally. We're partners. In everything. Partners, I agreed, and kissed him to seal the promise. We eventually got up, both of us needing to move, to adjust, to take care of basic needs. But unlike the past 3 years, where such moments would have sent Marcus retreating behind his walls, now there was an ease between us. He let me help him when he needed it, without shame. I accepted his help when he offered it, without feeling like I was burdening him. We moved around each other like dancers learning a new choreography, figuring out this new rhythm together. When we finally settled back into bed, Marcus pulled me close, arranging us so that my head was pillowed on his shoulder and his arm was around me. "This okay?" he asked. "More than okay," I murmured, already feeling sleep pulling at me. "This is perfect." I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the unfamiliar but wonderful sensation of being held. For a moment, I was disoriented, my body remembering 3 years of waking up alone. Then I felt Marcus's arm around me, felt his breath stirring my hair, and everything came flooding back. Last night had been real. I turned carefully in his arms, not wanting to wake him, and just looked at him. In sleep, the lines of stress and pain that had become permanent fixtures on his face over the past 3 years were smoothed away. He looked younger, more peaceful, more like the man I'd married. His eyes opened slowly, and for a moment I saw panic flash across his face, the same panic I'd seen for 3 years whenever he first woke up and remembered his new reality. But then, his eyes focused on me, and the panic gave way to something else. Wonder. And love. "Morning," I whispered. "Morning," he replied, his voice rough with sleep. His arm tightened around me. "You're really here. Where else would I be?" I asked softly. "I don't know," he admitted. Part of me thought maybe I'd dreamed last night, thought maybe I'd wake up and you'd be back in your room and everything would be the same as it's been. "Not a dream," I confirmed, leaning in to kiss him softly. "Very real. And I'm not going anywhere." "Good," he said against my lips. "Because I plan on spending the rest of my life making up for the past 3 years. That's a long time," I teased gently. "You sure you're up for it?" He pulled back to look at me, and the intensity in his eyes took my breath away. "Elena, I wasted 3 years of our marriage because I was too scared and stupid to see what was right in front of me. I could have had this, had you, had us, all along. And instead, I chose isolation and self-pity. So yes, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making that up to you. Starting right now." He kissed me then, deep and thorough, and I melted into it, into him, into the promise of new beginnings and second chances. When we finally broke apart, both of us slightly breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. "I love you," he said simply. "I never stopped." "I know," I replied. "I never stopped either. Even when I was angry with you, even when I was lonely and hurt, I never stopped loving." That's what made it so hard. Not the disability, not the changes to our life. It was loving you, and not being allowed to show it. "I'm so sorry," he said, and I could hear the anguish in his voice. "I am so sorry." "I know," I said gently, "and I forgive you." "But Marcus, we have to move forward now. We can't live in apologies for the past. We need to build something new." "You're right," he agreed. "So where do we start?" "With breakfast," I said practically. "I'm starving." He laughed, and the sound was so genuine, so full of real happiness, that it brought tears to my eyes. I'd forgotten what his laugh sounded like when it wasn't forced or fake. "What?" he asked, seeing my expression. "Nothing," I said, wiping at my eyes. I missed that. Your real laugh, the one that comes from your heart." "You're going to hear it a lot more now," he promised. "I've forgotten how to be happy, how to let myself feel joy. But you're going to remind me." Every single day, we got up together, moving through the morning routine with a new ease. Marcus let me help him when needed, without the tension and shame that had colored such moments before. And when he could do something himself, I let him, respecting his need for independence, even as I offered support. Breakfast was a revelation. We hadn't had a real meal together, a meal where we actually talked and laughed and connected in so long that it felt almost foreign at first. But slowly, we found our rhythm again. We talked about everything and nothing, his work, my plans to maybe return to nursing part-time, things we wanted to do together, places we wanted to go. And you know what? He said, setting down his coffee cup. I think we should see Dr. Morrison. The marriage counselor? I asked, surprised but pleased. Yes, he said firmly. We need help navigating this. We need someone objective to help us communicate better, to work through the damage of the past 3 years, to build healthy patterns going forward. I don't want to mess this up again, Elena. I don't want to fall back into old habits because we don't have the tools to do better. I think that's a really good idea, I said softly, reaching across the table to take his hand. Thank you for suggesting it. We also need to talk to my doctors, he continued. About intimacy, about what's possible, what's safe, what accommodations we might need. I want to do this right. I want to be the husband you deserve. The next few weeks were a revelation. Marcus moved back into our bedroom, into our bed, and it was like watching him come back to life. The wall he'd built between us slowly crumbled, brick by brick, until we were truly partners again. We started seeing Dr. Morrison twice a week. The sessions were hard sometimes, forcing us to confront the pain and resentment that had built up over 3 years of isolation and miscommunication. Marcus had to face how his shame and fear had hurt me. I had to face my own role in enabling his withdrawal, in not pushing harder sooner, in accepting the scraps of affection he offered instead of demanding more. But we did the work. We learned to communicate in new ways, to express our needs without guilt, to ask for help without shame, to offer support without smothering, and slowly, our marriage transformed into something deeper and more authentic than it had been even before the accident. Marcus threw himself into physical therapy with renewed determination, not because he harbored false hope of walking again, but because he wanted to be as strong and independent as possible for both himself and for us. He learned new techniques, tried new equipment, pushed himself harder than ever before, and I was there for all of it, cheering him on, celebrating every small victory, supporting him through the frustrations and setbacks. We also started going out again. The first time Marcus suggested we go to dinner at a restaurant, I nearly cried. For 3 years he'd refused to go anywhere public, too self-conscious about being in a wheelchair, too afraid of pitying looks or awkward questions. But now, he rolled right up to the host stand at his favorite restaurant and asked for a table with the confidence of a man who had nothing to be ashamed of. People did stare sometimes. Some looks were curious, some were pitying, some were just people noticing something different. And I could see that it still bothered Marcus sometimes, could see the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. But he didn't let it stop him, and when he felt overwhelmed, he told me, and we dealt with it together. We went to the theater, we visited museums, we had friends over for dinner, we started rebuilding the social life we'd abandoned, and in the process, we showed people that disability didn't mean tragedy, that our marriage was thriving, that we were happy. One evening, about 2 months after the night I wore the nightgown, Marcus surprised me. We were getting ready for bed, falling into the comfortable routine we'd developed when he said, "Elena, sit down for a minute. I have something I want to say." I sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly nervous. His tone was serious, and for a moment, old fears surfaced. Was he having second thoughts? Had he realized this was too hard? But when I looked at his face, I didn't see doubt. I saw determination and love. 3 months ago, he began, I was living a half-life. I was alive, but I wasn't really living. I'd convinced myself that the accident had taken away not just my ability to walk, but my ability to be a husband, to be a man, to be worthy of love. And in doing that, I was killing us both. You could have left, he continued, his voice thick with emotion. God knows you had every reason to. I gave you nothing for 3 years. No affection, no intimacy, no real partnership. I treated you like a caretaker and expected you to be grateful for scraps of attention. But you didn't leave. You fought for me even when I'd given up on myself. You loved me when I couldn't love myself. You reminded me who I was when I'd forgotten. He wheeled closer, taking my hands in his. I don't know what I did to deserve you, Elena Rodriguez-Chen, but I promise you this. I will spend the rest of my life being worthy of your love. I will spend the rest of my life showing you that you made the right choice in fighting for us. I will spend the rest of my life loving you with everything I have. Marcus, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. You already are worthy. You always have been. I know you believe that, he said gently, but I need to believe it too. And I'm getting there. Every day with you, every moment we share, every time you look at me like I'm your whole world, I believe it a little more. He pulled me into his lap, and I wrapped my arms around his neck, holding him close. I love you, I said against his neck. I love you so much. I love you too, he replied. More than I can express, more than words could ever convey. We held each other for a long time, just being together, just feeling the solid reality of our love and our commitment. When we finally pulled apart, Marcus wiped the tears from my cheeks with his thumbs. No more crying, he said softly, unless they're happy tears. 6 months after the night everything changed, we renewed our vows. It wasn't a big ceremony, just close friends and family gathered in our home. But it was meaningful in a way our first wedding hadn't been. Because this time, we knew what we were promising. We'd been through the fire and come out stronger. We'd faced the worst life could throw at us and chosen each other anyway. Marcus had written his own vows, and when he spoke them, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Elena, he began, his voice strong and clear. When we got married 4 years ago, I promised to love you in sickness and in health. But I didn't really understand what that meant. I thought it meant I would take care of you if you got sick. I never imagined I would be the one who needed care, and when that happened, I broke my vows. Not by leaving, but by shutting you out. By deciding that my disability meant I couldn't be the husband you deserved. He reached out and took my hand, his grip firm and sure. I was wrong. So wrong. Being a husband isn't about being able-bodied. It's about being present. It's about communication and commitment and choosing your partner every single day. It's about being vulnerable and letting yourself be loved even when you feel unlovable. You taught me that, Elena. You taught me that real love isn't about perfection or meeting some arbitrary standard of what a marriage should look like. Real love is about seeing each other fully, scars and struggles and all, and saying yes anyway. So today, I'm renewing my vows to you. But this time, I understand what I'm promising. I promise to be present every single day, to communicate with you honestly, even when it's hard, to let you love me, even on the days when I don't feel worthy, to love you with everything I have, in whatever form that takes. I promise to be your partner in all things, in joy and in sorrow, in strength and in weakness, in triumph and in struggle. I promise that I will never again push you away because I'm afraid. I promise to choose us every single day for the rest of my life. By the time he finished, I was openly weeping. My own vows were simpler, but no less heartfelt. Marcus, I said, my voice shaking with emotion. 4 years ago, I married you because I loved you. Because you made me laugh. Because you challenged me. Because you saw me in a way no one else ever had. And then, everything changed. You were right when you said you broke your vows by shutting me out. But I broke mine too. I promised to love you in sickness and in health, and for a while, I let you convince me that our marriage was over just because your body had changed. I should have fought harder, sooner. I should have refused to let you isolate yourself. I should have reminded you every single day that you were still the man I loved, still the man I chose, still worthy of love and desire and partnership. So today, I'm making new promises. I promise to always fight for us, even when you can't fight for yourself. I promise to see you fully, not as a disabled person, or a patient or a victim, but as my husband, my partner, my love. I promise to remind you of your worth on the days when you forget. I promise to build a life with you that celebrates who we are now, not who we used to be. I promise to love you, Marcus Chen, in whatever form that takes, for the rest of my life. We sealed our vows with a kiss that was both tender and passionate, both a remembrance and a promise. And when we pulled apart, the room erupted in applause and cheers. After the ceremony, after the small celebration with friends and family, after everyone had gone home, Marcus and I sat together on our balcony, looking out at the city lights. "Are you happy?" he asked quietly. "Happier than I've been in years," I replied honestly. "You?" "Yeah," he said, and I could hear the wonder in his voice. "I really am. I never thought I'd feel this way again, Elena. I never thought I'd feel whole." "You are whole," I reminded him gently. "You always have been." "I know," he said, and there was a certainty in his voice that hadn't been there before. "I'm starting to really believe that now." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, just being together. Then Marcus spoke again. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what? For not giving up on me. For fighting for us when I'd given up. For loving me enough to break through my walls. For reminding me that life isn't over just because it's different. You don't have to thank me for loving you," I said. "That's not something you have to earn or repay. It's just what I do." "Still," he said, pulling me closer. "Thank you." We sat there for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, looking toward a future that was uncertain but no longer frightening, because we'd learned the most important lesson. That love isn't about having a perfect life or perfect circumstances. It's about choosing each other, every single day, through whatever comes. A year after I wore that nightgown to bed, our lives had transformed completely. The penthouse that had felt like a prison of isolation and loneliness now felt like a home filled with love and laughter. Marcus had fully stepped back into his role as CEO, but with a new perspective. He no longer worked 16-hour days, no longer measured his worth by his productivity. He made time for us, for life, for the things that truly mattered. And his company thrived because of it, his leadership more compassionate and human than it had ever been. I'd returned to nursing part-time, working at a rehabilitation center helping other people navigate the challenges of disability and recovery. It was fulfilling work, and I brought home stories that Marcus and I would discuss over dinner, sharing insights and perspectives that helped both of us continue to grow. We became advocates, speaking openly about disability and marriage and intimacy. We wrote articles, gave interviews, shared our story with others who were struggling. Because we'd learned something valuable through our journey, and we wanted other couples to know that disability doesn't mean the end of intimacy, romance, or a fulfilling marriage. It just means adapting, communicating, and choosing love every single day. One evening, as we lay in bed together, Marcus said something that made me realize how far we'd truly come. "You know what's funny?" he said, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my shoulder. "What?" I asked, drowsy and content. "The accident was the worst thing that ever happened to me," he said quietly. But in a strange way, it was also one of the best things that happened to us. I propped myself up on my elbow to look at him, surprised. How so? Because it forced us to really see each other, he explained. Before the accident, our relationship was easy. We were in love. We had great chemistry. Life was good. But we never had to work at it. We never had to really communicate, really be vulnerable, really choose each other in the hard moments, because there weren't any hard moments. The accident changed that, he continued. It threw us into the hardest moment possible. And yes, I handled it terribly at first. I shut you out and nearly destroyed us. But when we finally worked through it, when we finally learned to communicate and be honest about our fears and needs, we built something so much deeper than what we had before. I thought about that for a moment. You're right, I said slowly. I loved you before the accident, but I didn't really know you. Not the way I do now. Now I know your fears, your insecurities, your struggles. I know what you look like when you're at your lowest. And I love you more because of it, not in spite of it. Exactly, he said, pulling me back down against his chest. We have a real marriage now. Not a fantasy, but something authentic and hard-won, and infinitely more valuable. I wouldn't change the accident, obviously. I'd give anything to have my legs back. But I wouldn't change what it taught us about love and commitment and what really matters in life. We lay there in comfortable silence, and I thought about everything we'd been through. The pain, the struggle, the fear, the loneliness of those 3 years. And then, the breakthrough, the healing, the rebuilding. It hadn't been easy. There had been setbacks along the way, moments when old fears and insecurities resurfaced, times when we had to consciously choose each other over our doubts. But we'd done it. We'd built something beautiful out of the wreckage. Sometimes, I said quietly, I think about that night. The night I wore the nightgown. What if I hadn't done it? What if I'd just accepted the way things were? We would have ended up divorced, Marcus said with certainty. Maybe not right away, but eventually. You would have realized you were too young to live the rest of your life like a widow to a man who was still alive, and I would have let you go, because I loved you enough to want you to be happy, even if it wasn't with me. I'm glad I didn't wait any longer, I admitted. I'm glad I fought for us. Me too, he said, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. Best decision of our lives. As I drifted off to sleep that night, wrapped in my husband's arms, I thought about everything we'd learned, about how love isn't always easy or simple or convenient, about how sometimes it requires fighting through fear and shame and pain to reach the beauty on the other side, about how vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the foundation of true intimacy, about how disability doesn't define a person or a relationship, about how choosing each other every single day, through every challenge, is what real commitment looks like. Our story isn't a fairy tale. There was no magic cure, no miraculous recovery. Marcus will never walk again. We'll always have to navigate the practical challenges of disability. But our love survived. More than that, it thrived. Because we learned that true love isn't about having a perfect life together. It's about building a real life together, scars and struggles and all. It's about seeing each other fully and choosing to stay anyway. Maybe this story speaks to you too. Maybe you're in a relationship that's struggling, that's facing challenges that seem insurmountable. Maybe you've shut someone out, or been shut out, and don't know how to bridge that gap. If so, I want you to know something. Love is worth fighting for. Real, authentic, vulnerable love is worth every difficult conversation, every moment of facing your fears, every instance of choosing connection over comfort. Don't wait 3 years like we did. Don't let fear or shame or pride keep you from the intimacy and partnership you deserve. Fight for your love. Choose each other. Be brave enough to be vulnerable, because on the other side of that fear, that struggle, that hard work, is something beautiful, something real, something worth every moment it took to build it. If this story touched your heart, if it made you believe in the power of love and commitment and choosing each other through the hardest times, I hope you'll share it. Subscribe to hear more stories of real love, love that survives and thrives through life's greatest challenges. Leave a like if you believe that true partnership means facing life together in all its messy, beautiful, complicated glory. And most importantly, if you're in a relationship worth fighting for, go fight for it. Don't wait. Don't let another day pass living a half-life when you could have something real. Because every day you choose love, you choose each other, you build something that can weather any storm. That's what Marcus and I learned. That's what we want you to know. Love, real love, is always worth the fight.